You want to get into real estate investing, but how will you fund it? Hi, I'm Megan. I love investing in real estate and empowering others to do the same. And today I'm interviewing Amy with Flat Branch Home Loans to help you understand how to become the ideal borrower for conventional loans. Let's get started. So Amy, thank you for being with us today. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got into lending and what you enjoy about it?
So I am of the opinion that most people get into lending by accident, and I consider myself to be one of those people too. Started working for a mortgage company when I was in college. This would be a while ago, but back in like 2006. And back in those days, the online leads were just becoming a thing. So started off just calling those online leads, reaching out to those clients, and just learning a little bit by bit about the business. And slowly, as I dipped my toe into it, started to learn that it's very addicting and that every day is a little bit different. You're constantly meeting new people. No one situation is the same. As you get better at your job and you learn more loan products, I think that that's what makes you want to continue to stay in it. It's just a constantly learning and bettering your craft every day. So I feel like every single month, something in our industry is changing, and that is why I've just kind of stuck with it.
So tell me about how you work with investors specifically from the conventional lending side.
A lot of what we do here at Flat Branch Home Loans, we focus on 1 to 4 unit residential properties, which means this would be for homes that typically we want to see as long-term investment rental properties. So that's really where I specifically try to focus my time and efforts in working with those specific clients. So the programs that we offer and we really want to try to hone in on are as low down payment as possible on an investment property. I know most investors are looking to kind of keep their cash as free up as possible. So we do as little as 15% down on a single unit investment property. If you're looking at 2, 3, or 4 units, that's going to require a little bit more money down. Another way though that we try to tap into the investment side of things is helping them focus on the refinance side of it. So a lot of these investors will go in, purchase these investment properties, renovate them, make them nicer, and then they want to look at their opportunities to be able to pull that equity out, oftentimes just to have the cash on hand, and usually to use that to purchase maybe even their next property. So it kind of help them utilize their asset in that way through those different products.
You've definitely helped me with that.
Yeah, familiar with it, right?
Yes. How does your underwriting process differ from other types of lenders maybe? How much do you look at the borrower versus the property during the process?
In terms of what makes us different, and this won't be different from every lender out there, of course, but we do all of our underwriting in-house, meaning that all of our underwriters are employed by Flat Branch Home Loans. So because of the type of lender that we are, though, we do sell our loans direct to those large government-sponsored entities, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae, which means that we literally look at their guideline book, and that is our playbook to determine who is qualified and how, and that is what our loan officers do as well as our underwriters. Obviously, very early on in the process, we're only focused on the borrower, right? When somebody initially applies with me and we don't necessarily know what property they're going to be purchasing, we're solely focused on credit history, cash flow, meaning from their own businesses, if they have an LLC or something like that. But once you do go under contract, I would say just as equally important is the collateral itself, right? That is a huge piece of the loan process. The thing to keep in mind, though, is as a lender, really the only piece of information that we have to determine if it's acceptable is the appraisal. Yes, we take that into heavy consideration, but at the end of the day, we're not looking at the home inspection itself. We don't require that. We don't even want to see it, quite frankly. We just want to make sure that the appraiser itself has done a good job of documenting that the value in the home is there and that there's no major health or safety issues that are going to cause our collateral to go south down the road.
What are the key financial readiness factors investors should consider if they want to be approved for loans on investment properties? So we're talking about credit score, DTI, reserves, anything else? Tell us about those.
The minimum credit score for a conventional loan is technically a 620. There are even options, though, to go lower than that. So there, like, for example, Freddie Mac, if you looked in their guideline book, it would say that there is no minimum credit score. The reality is the likelihood of getting approved for an investment property with a credit score below like a 660 or a 680 is going to be very difficult. It's not impossible, it's just not as likely. So credit is a big factor, and the score itself, while important, believe it or not, the way that the automated underwriting underwriting systems are set up that every lender in America uses when analyzing your credit, it's reading your trended data on your credit report as well. So even though a 780 borrower may look perfect from a credit score perspective, somebody with a 680 score might actually have better trended data. Maybe they just recently had a late, but historically they hadn't had any for 5 years prior to that. All of that is taken into consideration. So the score itself is not the end all be all, is my point, right? All of that information is looked at. In terms of income, 45% overall debt to income ratio has been the standard for a while, but you can go up to a 50% with a decent credit history. And assets are a big one. This is one that I think a lot of new investors often overlook. Reserves, they don't necessarily have to be liquid, but they do have to exist. So when you apply for a loan, be as forthcoming and as open as you can about the assets that you have, everything from stocks, bonds, retirement funds. Even though in your eyes it may not matter because it's not liquid, to an investor and a lender, that's a huge piece of it. The more debt you have, the more assets we want to see that you have to fall back on. Heaven forbid you hit a rainy day and maybe one of your tenants doesn't pay their rent for a few months. We want to know that you've got the cash reserves to cover that. Making sure that if you're going to get into the long-term investing game, that you are absolutely filing that information on your tax returns. It doesn't happen often, but every once in a while, somebody thinks that they're being crafty by avoiding that filing, or maybe they claim just a ton of expenses on their rental returns. Not that they're not legitimate, but they might have even taken it a step farther than they needed to try to back down on that taxable income. From the lending side, though, we want to see that you are claiming that income on your tax returns, and we do take those expenses into consideration. Are they one-time expenses, or are these normal continuing things? Are you telling us that it's costing you $5,000 a year just to get the lawn mowed? Okay, well then that's an ongoing expense, right? The grass isn't going to stop growing. So, but if it's a one-time repair, that's different. All of these things are considered whenever we're looking at your overall income on your tax returns.
If someone has a credit hiccup or high DTI, what are some strategies to improve their borrowing profile?
So a credit hiccup is the easiest one to get around. And I say easy because there's usually only a few answers to that. Depending on the type of hiccup, if we're talking a recent late, quite frankly, the best thing you can do is just get yourself back on track and let time heal that wound on your credit report. You can call the creditor and beg them to remove it. Sometimes if you're a good client, they will. Not as common, but that's an easy answer, right? And there's not a whole lot that you can do there besides continuing to use your credit responsibly, keep your balances low on those credit cards, and let the time increase and improve that score. In terms of income or DTI issues, that can boil down to a matter of making sure that you're documenting every bit of your rental income. Is this a property that maybe you have several rental homes in your portfolio, and did you choose not to disclose them to your lender because technically they're owned by another entity and not in your own personal name? It doesn't mean that we can't utilize the rental income from those by disclosing that. A cosigner is a great way around that. Do you have a partner or an investment partner that we can add to that loan to maybe help add some additional income? Or is there just a way to utilize equity that you have sitting in another property to pay down debt? There's lots of different ways to reduce debt. Sometimes it's the finding more income piece, that there's only so many ways that we can squeeze that out, but we can certainly always offer suggestions.
How do you handle borrowers who are strong in some areas, maybe like income and assets, but then weak in others like credit?
Usually it's just a matter of helping them understand that there's going to be different options out there. If you don't have an amazing credit profile, it's not necessarily going to be a matter of us not giving you a loan. It's understanding that maybe the interest rate initially that you're going to get, you may not love it as much now, but what are your options down the road for refinancing, for getting yourself into better loan terms if we can put you on a path to better that credit score? If it's truly a matter of credit qualifying, almost every lender is going to have some sort of tool that they can use to say, okay, if you've got $1,000 to fix your credit, where are you going to get the most bang for your buck on your credit report? And there's simulators and tools where we can plug all that in and say, okay, here's this credit card that you should pay down. Focus on this one and not this one. This will get you from point A to B as fast as possible.
How does income documentation work for self-employed individuals or real estate investors?
Tax returns, tax returns, tax returns. So you have to claim that income on your tax returns, whether or not you do it as a Schedule C, an S Corp, none of that matters. We just need to see it and have it all documented there. Again, with any lender, be as forthcoming as possible with your loan officer. Better to throw them all the documentation that you have and let them decide what maybe your underwriter should or should not see than to try to piecemeal it to them one at a time and say, okay, well, what about this business? Just give it to us all, right? We'll determine if there's income that we can or cannot use. But self-employment, if you're not claiming it on your tax returns, it's pretty difficult to find lending options that are going to be competitive. They exist, but you probably won't love the terms on them.
So what are the most common reasons applicants get denied?
I would say, obviously, credit history and credit score. Almost every lender out there is going to have a minimum credit score requirement. So right off the bat, one of the first things we're going to do is pull that credit report, see what's on it. Is it very clear that you are managing your money and your debts in a responsible way? Beyond that, it becomes a matter of the overall debt-to-income ratio, which is where, as a first-time investor, that's a big deal. If you already own an existing primary residence, now we're adding another mortgage to that. We want to make sure that the lender understands what type of investment you're making here. If this is going to be a long-term rental, we can assume that there's probably a fair market rent value that we can at least use to offset some of that new mortgage payment to help you qualify for the loan. Again, give your lender and your loan officer as much information as possible so they can look at those strategies so that you don't have an issue with a debt-to-income ratio or something on investment property.
What are some red flags that might kill a deal, even if everything else looks good on paper?
What we're seeing right now, kind of as an industry trend, is appraisers are going into properties, and for a conventional appraisal, really, the minimum property standards are fairly lenient. So they're appraising these properties and marking them as is. They either mark that they're subject to repairs or as is. There's only two options on an appraisal report. But what they're doing is after they mark it as is, they say, okay, but let me also take a picture of this crack in the foundation. By the way, there could be some water damage in the ceiling. And even though, for all intents and purposes, the appraiser is saying, I'm assigning this value to the property in its current condition, the lender gets that appraisal report back and says, whoa, wait a minute, there's a crack in the foundation here. Remember, this is the only document we get to determine the condition that the home is in. So that's a big deal. I would say if you are in the middle of a lending transaction and you get the appraisal report and the value looks great and it says it's as is, don't just automatically assume that you're green light and golden until you've definitely heard directly from your loan officer and their underwriter that they are A-okay with the property's condition. What we end up having to do in certain situations is just take it a step farther. Maybe you did get a home inspection and maybe the inspector said, I'm not worried about that crack in the foundation. That's standard and normal for the age of the home. The home is structurally sound, but maybe we do have to take it a step farther and actually bring in a professional to look at that. Water damage and foundation are two biggies that right now we're seeing investors really crack down on because they can cause major issues within a home that are extremely expensive to fix.
What are some common mistakes that you see borrowers make during the loan process?
Oftentimes it's a matter of not getting things to their loan officer when asked quickly. When you're under contract, there's a timeline for closing. Very few contracts don't have a specific closing date, right? As your lender, they're doing everything they can to keep you on track for that. So if they say, hey, I need an additional pay stub for you, or would you mind sending me over your next retirement statement when you get it, and you sit on it for a week, don't be upset if that delays your closing by a few days if you were trying to close the day after you sent them that. There's so many different things that have to happen. You know, an underwriter's got to review it, then a closer has to get in the loan, and a title company's involved. So it's usually just a matter of people just not understanding the timeliness of what's happening here and thinking, well, as long as I get it to my lender before closing, what's the big deal? And in their eyes, you've put them on a time crunch that's sometimes just not reasonable.
How can someone make your job easier and increase their chances of approval?
I would say in terms of making our job easier, it does go back to that documentation, being as forthcoming and as forthright with your loan officer about your intents with the property, all of your income and asset documents. You're better off giving them more than less up front. Your loan officer is not an underwriter. At the end of the day, they're there to help you and be that buffer between you and the underwriter. So they'll pick and choose what they think makes the most sense to share with this person who is truly going to be the final sign-off on your loan. It's interesting. I've had people not want to share with me that they have extra assets because for some reason they think that we're going to force them to put that towards the transaction. Like, we're here to help you. Let us know everything up front and then we'll let you know what we actually need to document. I would say that's a big one. The other one is just not paying attention to your credit during the transaction. You're told that your credit score is beautiful early on and you're like, great, I'm good, I'm golden. My lender said that my credit report's good for 90 days. And then over the next 90 days, you go out, you buy your fridge, you put everything on your credit card to get all the rewards and the points. And there are some lenders that that will do what's called a soft pull or a repull right before closing. And if there's a significant drop in the score, we're not back at square one, but that's not great. So take care of your credit during the process too. Be mindful of it. Call your lender if you're ever worried and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying a car, opening a new credit card. 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, stop, don't. Just give it time. Let's get through this. And then you can go ahead and start making some of those changes to your credit, because once you're closed, we're good.
Can you share a story of someone who turned things around to become loan worthy?
I've definitely had over the years very common occurrence where people reach out to us specifically to apply for a loan, assuming and knowing that they probably won't be eligible because of some sort of bumps and bruises that exist on their credit report. In those situations, what we would do is we would email the borrower a copy of their credit report with a very detailed and explicit credit plan that we have created using that simulator tool that I mentioned previously. We upload the credit report to a simulator. We say, okay, if we want to get from a 580 credit score to a 700, what needs to happen and when? It'll give us an idea of if it's even possible to happen on the short term. And if not, how many months we could anticipate that happening. It's a really neat little tool. We share all of that with them, completely transparent. Many, many times over the years, we've had people, they'll go quiet for months at a time and not return our calls when we follow up. And then a year later, they'll call us and be like, all right, let's do this. That's probably some of the best feelings that you get when you're like, hey, they listened, they took that information to heart, and I'm sure they were so appreciative of it. That's a pretty common scenario, quite frankly, in our industry. A little less common, but something that we see a lot on the investing side, or I should say more often on the investing side, has to do more with someone's rental portfolio. And when they initially apply, they had an accountant that was super crafty, did a fantastic job of making sure that they didn't have to pay $1 of income on their rental income. But when they go to apply for a home loan, we look at it and go, there's no qualified income here from your rental properties. You're taking a massive loss every year. And even though I know this is just an on-paper situation, we can't deliver a loan to an investor or an agency with the way you filed your returns. And we see them turn it around. We're willing to talk to an accountant. We're willing to show them how we calculate income using some of the forms and use that as a takeaway so that the next time when they're doing next year's tax returns, which is always just around the corner, they do a better job of ensuring that they don't shoot themselves in the foot by writing off and deducting too many expenses that, quite frankly, probably just weren't necessary, but can help them look better on paper for next year's loan.
If you could give one piece of advice to someone who wants to be the ideal borrower, what would it be?
I have thought about this a lot, and I think that one of the pieces that can be the most frustrating for a borrower when they go into a transaction is when they rely heavily on their loan officer to tell them what they can afford. What's ideal for me? When at the end of the day, we have credit score requirements, we have debt to income ratio, but we don't truly know how you spend your money every day. What do you value with that? So specifically speaking on the investor side, if you go under contract on a property and you don't determine what the monthly payment is going to be until after you're under contract, we have a problem, right? That should be something that you have researched, focused, talked to your loan officer about 3 times before making an offer to feel comfortable moving forward with that. To me, that's the ideal borrower. They're prepared. They know what they're looking for, and they're not necessarily just relying on me to tell them where they should be financially. They budgeted for that already, if that makes sense.
Thank you to our conventional lender, Amy, for taking the time to answer some questions. I hope this has helped you understand how to become the ideal borrower when it comes to conventional loans on real estate. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Keep learning, keep growing, and have fun.